Welcome to Constructive Conversations, the podcast dedicated to raising the standard of excellence in light construction. I'm your host, Colton Lingle. Each episode will explore the people, products, and processes that are shaping the future of this industry. From practical insights to proven best practices, you'll discover how to build better businesses, relationships, and buildings. This is where excellence isn't just expected, it's the baseline. Get ready, because today's constructive conversation starts now. Welcome back to Constructive Conversations. Today, we are going to be talking about our process in starting projects, where we've missed the mark, where we're trying to improve, the things that we're trying to put in place to see that grow. We're in the process of moving from me, the owner of Mountain Decks and Exteriors, doing all of the project management, to very shortly, I introduced Phil a couple episodes ago, and he is going to be our project manager. And so I've had to work through this and think through, okay, what do I do that miserably fails and we need to change? What do I do well that I think I need to make sure gets passed on to Phil as he takes over that role? So that is the process that we're going through right now. And I thought I'd talk through it with you guys and maybe even get a little bit of your guys' feedback for me. As I'm on this journey, really, you guys are seeing me and the company, Mountain Decks and Exteriors, grow and change and get better. And so give me some of that feedback, give me some responses, and I would appreciate that. I think, first of all, something that I can always improve on is communication. At a certain level, we're okay at it, but I still wish we could be better at it. We could communicate more. There's some tools in place now that we use or utilize, and there's some tools that I'd love to use more of. Automated text messages, it being one of those where we can kind of just set this up. Hey, the homeowner gets a text from our software letting them know that this is when we're starting this project. That's something we're looking at adding in the future, but right now we're still in that growing process. Another thing that we find in that communication is, things grow and change, and so projects don't always don't always finish on time because things change orders happen, that kind of stuff. So trying to have a schedule, a deck is probably going to take anywhere from a week and a half to 3 weeks. And sometimes in the process, you get weather events that happen, so it pushes schedules back. So there's that communication of, hey, your project got pushed back because the crew we were expecting to do it couldn't work 3 days this week because it was pouring rain, and just too dangerous to work. So they're a little bit behind. We're going to have to push your project back. We do a lot of that being here in Western North Carolina in the rainforest. We find, unfortunately, as much as we try, as hard as we work not to get affected by the weather, we still get affected by the weather. And so there's some of that. Sometimes there's change orders or things you just didn't expect that we'll jump into further along. But developing our communication better, communicating more often is never going to be a bad thing for them, unless, let me caveat that, it might be a bad thing if it starts to bother the homeowner to an extent. And in that case, then we try and then we know with that homeowner, they don't need that much communication. And that's okay. And so we can step it back. But usually we don't run into that issue. The only time that we've run into in the beginning stages of communicating is our invoicing software. When we send out an invoice, if it, say the check is in the mail, they've mailed the check and we're waiting for that to come, until that software sees the invoice recorded as paid, it will continue to send reminders to the homeowner every couple of days. And with the mail being as such around here, where if they mail it from let's say Canton, that letter's probably going to go all the way to Charlotte before it comes back to us, or all the way to Greenville before it comes back to us. And So it can take a little bit longer sometimes to get to us in the mail, which is certainly frustrating. But that's where it's been. Okay, we've searched for ways to turn that off in the software, and we just can't find any way to turn that off. So sometimes we get frustrated emails from our clients going, "Hey, I've already sent you. Why am I continuing to get in these emails? I've told you." I'm like, "I'm sorry, we haven't been able to turn it off. We'll let you know when we get that check, and we'll record it as soon as we can. But you might get another email, you know." So that's the one time where automations don't go above and beyond what I wish they would do. But in another sense, it's also helpful for reminders, getting people out there. So communicate. Another thing that I'm trying to get better at communicating that I haven't always done the best in is that the likelihood of things changing is very high. You open up a project. I've had this happen very recently on a project where looking at underneath the deck, it looked like there were two joists that were rotted, that need to be replaced on the deck. Other than that, it looked to be fairly good. There's some signs and symptoms that you can look at. Those of you guys that do this on a regular basis, you look at your joists and you see white fungus growing out of a deck joist. Probably needs to be replaced. That's not a healthy thing. You start to see some really dark black spots up towards the top of the joist. Probably rot. Probably needs to be replaced. All that kind of stuff. Wood flaking away. There were only really two joists that look that way from underneath. When we pulled the decking off, we found several spots where there was a thin line of rot right on top of the joists. So it went from just two deck joists in a 20-foot wide deck to about 10 deck joists in a 20-foot deck. And obviously we had a conversation with the homeowner saying, "Hey, this is what we estimated for. We were clear on that on the proposal, and this changed," and had that conversation with the homeowner. But also that significantly affects the timeline when you're in a difficult situation, and just trying to figure that out. To then go, okay, we were planning an hour or two to do all of this. We ordered all that material. Well, then we get to that, we ordered 2 boards. Well, now everything's been delivered, so now we have to spend an hour and a half running to the store, and then it's all that kind of other stuff, and these joists have angle cuts on it, and all kind of builds up, and gets there, and then you're in a situation where you're like, "Oh, it went from 2 hours of my day to 8 to 10 hours of my day to try and repair these joists," and so now we're um, in a difficult situation, and all of a sudden it's out of that time where was a 4-day project turns into a 5-day project. That's not quite as significant as a 10-day project that turns into a 12-day project, let's say. But those kind of things happen. So I'm trying to get better at, as a project manager wearing that hat, of saying, "Hey, the expectation is that this is our estimated time. This is our guesstimate on the amount of time, but if somebody's sick, one of the guys is sick, one of the subcontractors, their guys is sick, or maybe I didn't know that they had multiple projects going, so when they normally show up with 6 guys, they only showed up with 3. So, okay, well, all of that goes into effect, and we need to caveat that and communicate that. And when we find out those things, so maybe that subcontractor shows up with just 3 guys instead of 6, you say, "Hey, this was unexpected. Normally this happens." Obviously, he's a subcontractor, so he's got his own things that he's doing. It's his own company. He runs so this was how he decided to tackle this, etc., etc. But communicate with the homeowner. Sometimes that also means owning things that we've failed to do or made mistakes in doing. Just be willing to step up and own those mistakes. So communicating a lot, communicating schedule, communicating expectations. Also, another thing, again, I've already said this, but making sure you caveat that for your situation. So for me, we are in a rainforest. Things rot pretty quickly. You run into sometimes the flashing wasn't adequate. So there's expectations that come with our geographical area that when you start seeing them over and over and over again, you can prepare the homeowner for them and know that sometimes when our salesperson was out there, they didn't necessarily notice that, or it's just difficult to see. It's the ability to see that is not there for whatever reason. And so we find out after the fact, and there will be those things that change. And sometimes the homeowner changes those things for us, right? So sometimes they're going to come in and go, okay, this is what we want, da 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 da. But making sure that we have that ahead of have set that expectation of there's a strong chance that something in this project is going to change and will look different, and that's okay, but we need to know that you make sure you're prepared for that. So there's that. Something else we're trying to get better at is having that discussion with a homeowner and trying even from the time frame where they've thought about the project, they've signed a proposal for us, or they're on the schedule, and then it maybe takes 4 to 6 weeks for us to get to it. And that 4 to 6 weeks, something has changed. Maybe they chose a different color. Maybe they of paint that they want their trim to be. Maybe they chose a different color decking. That's kind of a big one. We need to know that ahead of time. But sometimes it's as simple as they picked a different stain for the railings, or they have decided to go from galvanized hog wire to powder coated black hog wire. Those are the kind of things that it's not a game changer, but make sure I'm going ahead of the game and making sure I'm asking those questions to say, hey, is this still okay with you? So those are one of the things that I'm going to, moving forward after the last couple of projects that we've wrapped up, moving forward, I'm going to start implementing, hey, this is what the proposal looks like. Let's make sure we're all on the same page before we start taking off boards and doing all this demo of this current deck. Let's make sure the new deck is actually what you want it to be, and that expectation and desire hasn't changed from the start of the project to the end of the project, and make sure that we're all on the same page there. And then another thing that we try and do, make sure we connect with, is I try and connect the homeowner to whoever's doing that work. So whether it's a subcontractor that I have, and I'm trying to introduce them to face and say, hey, this is Noah. This is the guy doing your project. He's awesome. I love him. He's done amazing work for us in the past. Yes, he's a subcontractor, but we trust him. I use Noah. Maybe he'll make it on the podcast at some point. I hope he makes it on the podcast at some point, but use Noah as an example. He's one of those subcontractors that we love. He cares a lot about our clients, takes good care of them, and it really cares about doing a good job. And so we keep on using him because of that. Another one recently, Ben, one of our other guys that works with us, directly works for Mountain Decks and Exteriors. I love introducing Ben to the homeowner, saying, look, this is a guy we trust. He does amazing work. And I've seen that played out where just in a recent project that he finished, I set that expectation up at the beginning. You're going to be working with Ben. Ben does great work, and you're gonna see that throughout the process. You're gonna see that upon completion, and upon completion, she's like, yes, Ben isn't great. And I told Ben, look, best body of work up to date. It was this project that he just finished, and the homeowner's really thrilled. But I saw a big benefit making sure that she knew that Ben is on your project. This is who Ben is. Ben's great. And Ben is very capable, making sure that they know that they're in good hands, because Colin, our sales guy, who you've also met on a different episode, and myself, we're not on the job site all the time. They don't see us all the time. We're not there. So they're placing their trust in somebody other than us. Obviously, they've trusted us with the project, but now we're having to extend that trust that they've placed in us and place that trust onto somebody else and continue that connection moving one step forward. Obviously, that is important for that person to understand the trust that they're being placed on them and go with that. But to continue that trust and build that connection with them. So that's one of the things that I found to be very successful in communicating and seeing the benefits of making sure that passes along, and that trust then is passed along as well. That's pretty important for the overall health of the project, if you will, to see them Trust that. So we've talked about communicating as much as you can, communicating that things will change, that not everything's going to be the same as from start to finish, and that's okay. Making sure that we go through the proposal one more time, make sure nothing has changed in their minds and they haven't communicated it. Usually it's things that have no or very little physical impact on the project, the cost of the project, the duration of the project. A lot of times it's just simple stuff as like, oh, I wanted a different color stain. I decided, or the HOA said this or that, and you can take care of those up front and make sure you're on the same page from the get-go. Because I found actually in this past summer, there were a couple projects where in the 10 weeks or so that it took from these clients signing the project to the time it started to take place, they had essentially had conversations with me in their mind without actually having conversations about expectations about how things changed. And then when it got to the project, they never actually had those conversations with me in person. And so I didn't know the expectations had changed when they had. And then I ended up dealing with that halfway through the project. I was like, oh, I need to start doing a better job of this. Ultimately, it's my job, my responsibility to make sure those outcomes are what the client wants. And so I'm having to learn from that. So, and then the final thing is make sure that you're passing along the trust that they have in you and your company, and making sure you're passing along that trust from you and from your salesperson onto your production employee or your subcontractor, and making sure that gets passed along. Obviously, it goes without saying that you have to have that faith, or it should go without saying that you also have to have faith in that employer, that subcontractor, that they will actually do a good job. And so that sometimes that trust has to be built between that employee or that subcontractor. Personally, before you can pass that trust along to the homeowner. But it's imperative that for the health of the project that you are able to say that. You go out and you find the best employees, you find the best subcontractors, and then you can honestly say, hey, these guys are the best that I've been able to find. I love working with them. They're great people. You're in good hands. And passing that along so that they make sure they're comfortable. And then, probably better for another day, or we'll catch up with another day, then you have the opportunity to say, catch up with them and make sure their experience with this person, this subcontractor, this employee, aligns with your experience. And sometimes you have to go to that employee and say, hey, you've been entrusted with expectation. Let's make sure we're living up to it, because you haven't, according to this client, you haven't been living it up to in this way. So let's step it up. That doesn't happen very often, but sometimes it does. And usually I see those people, those employees or subcontractors step up and rise to the occasion. I'm thankful for it. So that's all I have for you today on this topic of that, starting that process, the communication, the expectations, all of that. That's what I got for you. Again, not perfect at this, still learning, putting stuff out there. Love to get the feedback from you guys. As always, like, comment, subscribe, all those things that all the kids say these days. And stay humble, stay working, and we'll see you next time on Constructive Conversations. Thanks for joining us on Constructive Conversations, where we're raising the standard of excellence one episode at a time. If you found today's discussion valuable, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you know a homeowner or contractor who could benefit from these insights, share this podcast with them. Until next time, keep building smarter, keep raising the bar, and keep the conversation constructive.